Big Braid, who has been working hard as a matchmaker for Duanfang, brought good news, but it is not the time. The girl's mother is so tough, nothing else is in a hurry, but she must first pull Duanfang over and see him. Shen Cuizhen was a little embarrassed. Right now, Duanfang has an injured face, and the wounds on his face are still bruised there. How can they meet? Shen Cuizhen said that Duanfang's current appearance is definitely not his real level. Big Braid said nothing, thought for a while, and said, "At least take a look at the photos." This made Shen Cuizhen stumped. How come Duanfang has photos? How could such a family afford to take pictures? Fortunately, Shen Cuizhen is a smart woman. She had an idea. She immediately took out Duanfang's high school graduation photo and made a deep mark on Duanfang's chin with her fingernail. Big Braid took the graduation photo, although she found Duanfang at a glance. It was a group photo after all, a small appearance. And the facial features were not clear, so she couldn't tell anything. Big Braid took Duanfang's high school graduation photo, smiled, and said, "Cuizhen, you really have an idea. Being a woman is really your big loss." But the girl side is so stubborn that she refuses to be accommodating on the issue of seeing the person first. Big Braid returned to Duanfang's graduation photo to Cuizhen's hand, repeating the woman's meaning. Cuizhen said to herself, "How can there be such a family who doesn't understand nature?" Her heart was half cold. Big Braid looked at Cuizhen's face and said in her heart, "Shen Cuizhen has only given birth to 3 sons, but never a birth daughter. How would you know a mother-in-law's caution when she looks for a son-in-law?" Cuizhen said worriedly, "Big Braid, you didn't say anything about Duanfang being beaten." Big Braid said, "How unlucky that thing is. Why would I mention that? I didn't mention it. I didn't say a word." Cuizhen thought Big Braid is Big Braid. She is reliable when she speaks and acts, and she is a proper person. Big Braid said, "See or not, I need to answer." Cuizhen didn't say anything. She went back to the room to grab 10 eggs, stuffed them into Big Braid's hand, and said with a smile, "Big Braid, I'll have to trouble you next time." Big Braid was being polite for a while and heard the meaning. This matter was put down, and it was left here. She, Big Braid, knows about Cuizhen. Even though she has married twice, she doesn't turn around for the same pastor. She's a female stubborn donkey. Duanfang's current appearance is indeed not his real level. With all the injuries on his face, he inevitably runs to cooperative medical care. Going there a lot, changing the medicine is the second thing. Instead, it's just drinking soda and chatting with Xinlong by the way. Xinlong has been a soldier. He has seen the world, and there is always something different in his conversation. In general, he has a single-minded suggestion that Duanfang should join the army. Always stay in one village. Either treat yourself like a tree or treat yourself like a pig, Xinlong said. There is another sentence that Xinlong has been talking about all the time. Anyhow, get a submachine gun to play with, and you can get a pistol to play with if you get it well. That favored Duanfang, as it is mainly fun. Xinlong intentionally didn't say promotion, just wanted to say get a pistol to play with. Going back and forth, Duanfang's mind was slowly moved by him. Yeah, get a pistol to play with? That's good. Unexpectedly, Wu Manling came to cooperative medical care this afternoon. Like Demon, Wu Manling is also an educated youth from Nanjing, but now she is the branch secretary of Wang Village. Talking in detail, Duanfang and Wu Manling are not very familiar with each other, and they have hardly said anything on their own. Why? Because Duanfang has been in Zhongbao town for the past 2 years, and he doesn't go home very often. There are naturally fewer opportunities to talk. What about 2 years ago? 2 years ago, the height of Duanfang hasn't jumped up, and he looked like a malnourished teenager, thin and small. How could Secretary Wu notice him? Therefore, although they are both Wang villagers, the two are actually very separate. Wu Manling came in with her finger straight. Her finger was cut by something and was bleeding. Wu Manling's face was always smiling. It seemed that this little injury was nothing to her iron girl. It was commonplace. Wu Manling crossed the threshold. What caught Duanfang's attention was not the blood on her hand, but Wu Manling's feet. To be precise, Wu Manling's feet and toes. She was barefoot, with a layer of mud on the back of her feet. Half of it was dry, and her trousers were rolled up to her knees. Duanfang noticed that Wu Manling's black toes were all open, which is what happened to the barefoot farmers. Duanfang was deeply impressed by Wu Manling's feet. Duanfang stood up and said respectfully, "Secretary Wu." Wu Manling glanced at Duanfang, smiled, and said, "Is it Duanfang? A Duanfang guy. What did you learn? Don't you call me Sister Wu, but with or without a secretary?" Duanfang was taken aback. It wasn't Wu Manling who called out his name, but her accent, the tone she spoke with. Wu Manling doesn't have any Nanjing accent anymore. She speaks Wang village's words very authentically. She's simply a village girl, born and raised in Wang village. Wu Manling glanced at the wound on Duanfang's face and said, "Pei Quan is such a jerk. He has such a heavy hand. I haven't talked to him for a long time." Duanfang said quickly, "It's all over." Wu Manling said softly with a smile, "You don't study well. Where's the strength? You guys didn't go to work on the farm, but fought. I will hold a study class sometime for you, tighten the clockwork for you, and tighten your cheap bones." Duanfang knows that Secretary Wu is criticizing, but the tone is affectionate, with the enthusiasm of a homie, and it is a soft slap, but it is very useful in his heart. He didn't expect Wu Manling to be so approachable, and the spring breeze blows his face as soon as she speaks, which can leave an unforgettable impression on people. With that said, Wu Manling has by herself disinfected the wound, sprinkled anti-inflammatory drugs, covered it with gauze, and wrapped it herself up. Didn't trouble Xinglong at all. Everything was in order. Duanfang thought that Wu Manling would sit down and chat randomly, but not. Wu Manling doesn't have that spare time. She came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Duanfang looked at Wu Manling's back and suddenly remembered that Wu Manling was actually not a few years older than him, but she already spoke and acted as an elder. It can be said very strictly and nicely. It's not annoying but easy, more lively and more fun. Duanfang used to think that Wu Manling was an arrogant person, but now she doesn't seem so at all. Her authentic country accent has fully explained the problem. However, there is a question that confuses Duanfang. Where is Wu Manling's beautiful Nanjing dialect? Also, where did her good-looking look go? Seeing Wu Manling walking away, Xinglong took out a soda, a bottle for himself and a bottle for Duanfang. Xinglong took 2 sips with a meaningful smile on his face and suddenly said, "Duanfang, you have to be nice to her." This sentence is a bit out of his mind. He didn't know where it came from. Duanfang said, "Be nice to whom?" Xinglong's mouth pushed outward, obviously referring to Wu Manling. Duanfang was confused and asked, "Why?" Xinglong said, "Do you still want to be a soldier?" Duanfang said, "Sure." Xinglong said, "It's still, she doesn't let go. How can you be a soldier? You remember, silly boy, your life is in her mouth. It can be a word in her mouth, or it can be a piece of phlegm in her mouth." To explain this more intuitively, Xinglong coughed and spit out of the door. Xinglong's phlegm could not fly far. It fell at the inner threshold and lay on the ground like a pile of chicken shit. Wu Mainling became the branch secretary of the Wang Village Brigade on Women's Day in 1974. Dear God, on February the 21st, an incident happened in Wang Village, and the original branch secretary was blocked in bed on February the 21st. Wu Mainling continued on March the 8th, and everything came naturally. The original branch secretary was Wang Lianfang, a guy with a kind-hearted face. However, what does the old saying go? There are two faces of a man, one hanging on his face and the other hiding in his crotch. Generally speaking, what can be trusted is not in the face, but in the crotch. Let's talk about Wang Lianfang. Wang Lianfang's face is very honest, very responsible, and even a little silly. No one would have thought that he was a naive face, but the second child in his crotch was tricky. Wang Lianfang has a good show in front of women, never being rude, not playing the trick of the overload. On the contrary, he is pitiful. If he likes a new bride, he will often be very polite and take care of everything. Seizing the opportunity, he smiles and says to others, "Help me, help me." The so-called "help me," to put it bluntly, is actually asking women to take off their pants. "Help me" is Wang Lianfang's catchphrase. It is very elegant and very secretive. It sounds like he is engaged in a serious job. In fact, at certain times, the women were working, naked and trembling, and placed under the bedsheet, leaving Wang Lianfang to be busy. No one knows how many women Wang Lianfang has made help. There is a jingle that circulates in private like this. Wang Lianfang is really busy. Mothers-in-law in all places. Mothers-in-law also surnamed Wang. The name is Wang Village. However, Wang Lianfang was carried away by the victory, played to the end. No matter how busy your little dick is, you can't ask the military sister-in-law to help you. Isn't that bump to the muzzle, to the cannon, to the tank? He just bumped into it. As a result, he was caught in bed by the woman's mother-in-law. Wang Lianfang's political life was immediately shattered. Wang Lianfang went down, and Wu Mainling come up. When it comes to Wu Mainling, the villagers have a lot to say. Her deeds can be set in a basket, a hamper, and endless. As soon as she came to Wang Village, Wu Mainling shouted a slogan, which is the most famous 2 B's and 2 nots. Be a countryman, not a city person. Be a man, not a woman. Wu Mainling said so and did so. Just to give an example, in the winter of the first year, the captain arranged for the males of the production team to carry dung. But Wu Mainling disagreed and stood up. She wanted to carry it too. The production captain was troubled. In fact, it makes sense for the captain to do so. Carrying dung is not an ordinary job, not only tired, but also too dirty. How come the dung is good stuff? Although it is in the ditch, it doesn't show its mountain or dew. If you really move it, the dung scoop stirs it up and will come out so badly that it can stink for 3 miles, show its teeth and claws, and even dogs will escape. How can women bear it? Wu Mainling did not believe in this evil. She insisted, what male comrades can do, we female comrades can do it too. This sentence was actually said by Chairman Mao, but when Wu Mainling said it, you can feel that she was reciting Chairman Mao's quotations, and it was like she said it, and she blurted out. This can at least explain 2 things. First, Chairman Mao always relies on the bank to get off his feet when he speaks. He either does not speak or speaks the heart of the majority of women comrades. Second, Wu Mainling has learned from Chairman Mao's quotations to the core. She did not regard Chairman Mao's words as delicacies or fatty fish and meat, just commonplace. So she implemented them in ordinary actions. Wu Mainling really went, just a female among the men, walking like flying on the smelly road. Of course, it wasn't a fortune. Maybe it was too much force, and maybe Wu Manling didn't take it seriously, as her body came ahead of time. It came. Wu Manling didn't realize it. She was still competing with the males. It was a little boy who found out what was wrong with Wu Manling. He stopped Wu Manling and said, "Sister, your foot is broken and bleeding." Wu Manling put down the dung bucket, turned around, and saw the bloody footprints on the ground. Everyone gathered around. Wu Manling took off her shoes, looked at her feet for a long time, and found nothing wrong. Only then did the captain notice that the blood was flowing from Wu Manling's trousers. The captain was a married man, and he guessed 8 or 9 points, but he couldn't pick it out clearly, so he could only vaguely take care of Wu Manling and let her go back first. Wu Manling's face was flushed with shame, but listen to what she said. Wu Manling said, "Minor injuries don't get off the line of fire. Let's go. Let's finish this trip." The captain later remarked on Wu Manling's goodness to everyone, saying that "Little Wu, this girl is a scumbag." Little Wu is not a scumbag. In Wang village, Little Wu is actually the kindest and most talkative person and is good to everyone. No matter the old or the young, she smiles at everyone and has something to say when it's nothing. Even if they met on the road, she would say hello, "Haven't eaten yet." Kind, warm, like a family. Lady Wu is not only enthusiastic to shorten the distance to the poor, the lower, and the middle farmers as soon as possible, but she also began to study, learning the dialect of Wang village. When other educated youths were still gesturing with their hands because of language barriers, Wu Manling had long since blended in, and her tongue was quietly straightened. Yes, it's no longer shi, but si, and eat is no longer chi, but ci. She referred to all as hablangdang, as the little boys as little numbnuts. She also learned to scold people, and she would call you an ill thing. Occasionally foul language. Her foul language is very cute. Not only is it not annoying, not obscene, on the contrary, it is not outside. It is fascinating. It is completely childlike fun. The same foul language, when someone says it, it will push their buttons, and if it is not done well, they will fight. But they won't if Little Wu says it. Not only won't, but people would also laugh, with winkles and gum on their entire faces. They feel that this child was born in the wrong place. How could she come from Nanjing? It's impossible. She's the birth daughter of our Wang village. On the other hand, the villagers are just open-mouthed in front of their Little Wu, and sometimes they are so rude. They say whatever they wanted to say and make fun of whatever they wanted to make. Little Wu is not an outsider, and being polite means treating her as an outsider. Sometimes they even use Little Wu's marriage to make fun of her. When there are many people and the atmosphere is good, the elderly women will make fun of Little Wu. Little Wu, it's time to get married. Should you have a partner? Although Wang village has nothing else good, there are still some good guys. You choose. You choose. The rest will be given to others. In fact, everyone understands. How can Little Wu marry in Wang village? How is it possible? Wang village, this chicken can't hold her. But Little Wu seems particularly sensible at such a time. She fixed it in low. Little Wu said, "Who would want me? Didn't our captain say it? I am a scumbag, a tigeress. Who would want me?" What a good way to say this, kicking the problem back without hurting the villagers' faces. No wonder the villagers like her. Not afraid of not knowing the goods, but afraid of comparing goods. Then look at Demon. He is also an educated youth and also from Nanjing. Once someone joked with him and wanted to hook him up with Wang Haiying from the east of the village. Demon had no expression at all, and it took him a long time to slowly say 3 words in Nanjing dialect. Take a break. That made Haiying so angry that she almost hanged herself. Haiying has since had a very disgraceful nickname, Take a Break. It was so hurtful that the family ignored him till now. Of course, there is no need to worry about little Wu's marriage. Here are her conditions. But you can say that. Put it in the past. This sentence is correct. However, after little Wu became the secretary of the brigade branch, the situation changed a bit. First, in recent years, most of the educated youth have left. Those who should return to the city have returned. Those who should be in the army have joined the army, and those who should enter the factory have entered the factory. There are only 2 educated youth left in Wang village, Wu Manling and Demon. Who is she falling in love with? A few years ago, little Wu could have, but she was so focused on political prospects that, of course, she could only let go of her relationship. This is a must. How can you ask for progress while in a relationship? Isn't that stepping on 2 toes? Thus, little Wu was disconnected from the educated youth. Second, the children of the farmer's family are definitely not worthy. This is obvious, needless to say. Third, urbanize match urbanize. But little Wu had such a prospect in Wang village. If she returns to the city now, it would be a loss. Wouldn't her suffering for so many years be in vain? Fourth, this one is the most important. After all, little Wu became the party secretary of the village. Without the corresponding conditions, who is qualified to marry her? Oh, a party secretary marrying an ordinary party member? Or, in other words, a party member marrying an ordinary citizen? Who would dare to marry? Like having eaten a leopard gall. Wang Lianfang, who has stepped off the stage, once talked about Wu Manling and said something from the bottom of his heart. Wang Lianfang said, even if Wu Manling is naked and laying there, few dicks would be erect in Wang village. Wang Lianfang is just like this. He stepped off and spoke strangely. However, on this issue, he was quite honest. Rough words with rational theory. After Wu Manling became the branch secretary, no one made jokes about marriage issues to her anymore. It's not because little Wu has become a secretary and has pride. Nope. People like little Wu never put on airs. On the contrary, people in Wang village can bear it. Who would have thought that little Wu, who is so cheerful and enthusiastic, would make such a big fool of herself on this issue? That was last year's Spring Festival. According to Wu Manling's plan, she was supposed to go back to Nanjing. However, Zhiying was getting married. Speaking of which, Zhiying and Wu Manling are not in an ordinary relationship. How good is it? They had slept in one bed for 3 winters. They can be said a pair of sisters. For days, Wu Manling has already called Zhiying's mother 4th auntie. Just after New Year's Day, Zhiying went to Wu Manling's and asked Wu Manling if she would go back to Nanjing during the Spring Festival. Wu Manling said that she will certainly go back this year. Zhiying stopped talking. Wu Manling thought that Zhiying was going to ask her to bring something from Nanjing, but Zhiying shook her head and did not speak. Wu Manling said, "Is it lacking money? If you have no money, I will ask my mother to send it over." Zhiying said, "No." Zhiying said that she was going to get married, and the man had already set the date for the 2nd day of the new year. Zhiying lowered her head and said that she was married on the next day of the Spring Festival. Zhiying lowered her head and said that when she marries, no matter how, she wants to invite Sis Manling to sit at the table. Sit at the table means to have a wedding feast. Zhiying is an honest person, so she said it is not entirely out of the friendship between the 2 of us. There is also an unspoken reason. Zhiying said that her mother said that if a girl's family does not even have a village cadre at the wedding banquet, no matter how much food and how good the wine is, she is always shabby and she will always feel unreasonable and vulnerable. She might be bullied by her in-laws after marrying. Wu Mainling is the party secretary of the village. With her sitting at the table, the formation will be held. Of course, it is a different kind of scenery. Zhiying's mother was embarrassed to tell little Wu, so she called Zhiying here. This layer of meaning must be taken care of. Otherwise, if little Wu leaves, the wedding will be boring. Wu Mainling agreed immediately. It should be said that the day of Zhiying's wedding was very huge. One side was the bride, and the other side was the village party secretary. You can imagine. The most important thing is that because of Wu Mainling's presence, all the village cadres came together, like holding an enlarged conference of the village committee. The main tables were all village cadres, which could be said a super luxurious lineup. Everyone was here, and the village cadres found their seats according to their positions and sat. Wu Mainling delivered a speech after the warm applause. She said that she originally wanted to go back to Nanjing, but she had to come to Zhiying's wedding banquet. She said that she did not drink alcohol originally, but she has to drink Zhiying's wedding wine. Secretary Wu raised the glass to toast Zhiying's father, mother, groom, and bride. Such a scene is a sign that it is already a climax before drinking a glass of wine. After the toast, Wu Mainling especially pulled the fourth auntie aside, dragged her into her room, and took out 5 yuan from the jacket pocket of her Zhongshan suit, which was regarded as a present for Zhiying. Wu Mainling originally only had a 5 yuan bill on her body. Thinking about it, she called the brigade accountant and replaced it with 5 1-yuan bills. In this way, it has a thickness and looks much better. How come Zhiying's mother wants it? To drink Zhiying's wedding wine, Secretary Wu didn't even return to Nanjing. Her friendship with Zhiying can be said very deep. How can she accept her present? Can't. What's more is such a large amount. Fourth aunt's arms moved around, and she couldn't accept it. It was held like that. On the one hand, Wu Mainling memorized Zhiying's mother's kindness to her for so many years. On the other hand, she was really homesick, really moved, deliberately lowered her face, and said, "Fourth aunt." "In Wang village, you're my mother." Wu Mainling said, "Take it." Zhiying's mother froze for a moment, and her eyes immediately turned red. Took it. Zhiying's mother suddenly grabbed Wu Mainling's hands, clasped them in her palms, and clenched her tightly, saying, "Daughter, you have suffered all these years, and mother sees it all in her eyes. It hurts, my girl." Wu Mainling smiled and turned her face away. Zhiying's mother said, "Girl, even if you're married to the horizon in the future, I will drag my old legs to have your wedding wine." This is an oath made only by a mother who is worried about her daughter's marriage. Her hands were so tight with a mother's 1,000 cautions and 10,000 instructions. It is a painstaking entrustment. Wu Mainling didn't speak. She knew she would cry as soon as she spoke. She nodded. Thinking about it, she nodded again. "Yes," she said. This was the first time Wu Mainling sat at the table as the branch secretary, and it was lively. In fact, Wu Mainling soon became the protagonist of this wedding banquet. The bride was left aside and became her green leaf. All the people toasted her again and again. And because she's a female comrade, people there made up jingles that women can drink a lot, such as "Women on trips, magic tricks," and "Women sip, we got no chip." Wang village people drink like this. drinking is secondary, and they mainly use alcohol to express respect to others. Therefore, it is necessary to keep respecting, like a charge. Since it is respect, it is not a normal drink. You have to accept it. Otherwise, it is not good. And if one is respectful, others will not be disrespectful. In other words, if you accept someone's respect, you can't refuse another's respect. Wu Manling couldn't drink, mainly because she lacked experience at the banquet, and she was not familiar with the Wang village's drinking classics. Before the wedding banquet was halfway through, Wu Manling was high. Her face was full of red light, and her eyes were shining like a thief, but she was not guilty at all. And there was a countenless smile on her face, and she couldn't take it back if she wanted to. Now Zhiying is here. Zhiying pulled the groom all the way to Secretary Wu, and they wanted to respect Secretary together for a toast. Wu Manling held the wine glass and stood up, still laughing. She suddenly raised her voice and asked the groom a question. "Can you be nice to our Zhiying?" The groom is a simple and honest young man, and he has never seen such a big scene before, and his face was also warmed red by the wine. When Wu Manling asked this question, he was stunned, terribly embarrassed, kept pursing his lips. However, Wu Manling insisted and asked, "Can you?" The groom secretly glanced at Zhiying, which was interesting. His eyes were proud and satisfied, pleasing and flattering, almost stupid, almost incompetent, kind of dementia. It's as if Zhiying was a fairy who descended to the earth and was caught by him. He got a huge advantage, and he was so happy that didn't know what to do. The groom raised his neck suddenly, drank it recklessly, and said loudly, "Loyal or no, see what I do." There was an inexhaustible amount of courage in his tone, which was boundless loyalty and sincere heroism. The guys burst into laughter. Wu Manling didn't smile. No. The young man's peek at Zhiying was seen by Wu Manling, and it was all in Wu Manling's eyes. Wu Manling could see that the young man likes Zhiying, loves her so much. The kind of love that is lifeless, treats Zhiying as a baby, and is willing to die for Zhiying. Zhiying is really not very good looking, nor is she a very good girl. She is much worse than me. But why did the young man treasure her so much and care about her so much? And looked at her secretly. Wu Manling was moved. There was an element of jealousy, and there was an element of self-indulgence. It was quite biting, and it poked her heart all at once. Over the years, no young man has ever looked at me with such eyes. There has never been. Wu Manling's arrogant heart was swatted by something. A wave of sadness poured out and flowed. How could the people around her know Secretary Wu's trivial thoughts? Relying on their alcoholism, they were still booing there. Wu Manling was holding the wine glass, but her eyes had already dispersed. The wine had come up, and Wu Manling was still lingering there, wrapping herself in. The tighter the winding, the deeper the winding. She sat down as if being hit very hard. She fell into a trance alone, lonely and depressed. A thick layer of tears welled up in her eyes. It's thick and dangerous. Zhiying saw it and knew that Wu Manling was drunk, put down the wine glass, and walked behind Wu Manling. Zhiying pressed Manling's shoulders and said, "Sister Manling?" The banquet suddenly fell silent. Zhiying said, "Sister Manling?" Everyone put down their wine glasses and looked at Wu Manling together. Wu Manling has long been like no one else was around, tears welling up in her eyes. Wu Manling didn't cry. She didn't make a sound at all. She was just sobbing there. The teardrops were particularly large and fell very fast, as if threads were broken. Wu Manling didn't say anything. This iron girl didn't say anything. But in front of so many people, she actually said everything. She is not an iron girl. She is not a male. She is female. She is a girl. She is a girl from Nanjing. Fortunately, the folks in Wang village liked Secretary Wu and knew that her heart was hurt. Actually, when Wu Manling was sober, she forgot everything. However, the people of Wang village could not forget. They were still joking with her, as they always did. But the topic of that was never brought up again. Everyone went around that, like an appointment. Wu Manling, in turn, was unaware of this. After becoming the branch secretary, Wu Manling moved her bed to the brigade. The brigade was set up behind the threshing field of the 2nd Protection Team, separated from the threshing field by only a river, which was actually a large hall. There is a stage at the top. Every winter, especially before and after the Spring Festival, there are cultural and artistic programs on the stage, 3.5 sentences, matching words, or singing. Of course, it is mainly for publicity. The spirit of the central government changes every year, but it doesn't really matter. No matter how it changes, it is nothing more than a few politicians who are unlucky. It doesn't matter, just change their names while performing, and the rest are the same. Act the same, sing the same. Facing the stage on the east, the far west is a wing, where the loudspeaker equipment is stored in the brigade. Wu Manling's home is now in the west wing. There are loudspeakers in the village, and the branch secretary gives instructions, issues notices, and handles major problems. Wu Manling yearly does it at home. As the leader of the new generation of Wang village, Wu Manling pays more attention to education. Chairman Mao said that the important issue is to educate the farmers. Wu Manling then focused her work on education. Therefore, since she became the branch secretary, she organized the farmers. Instead of watching opera, she ran a night school for literacy. The main task of the literacy night school is knowing the words, which requires shouting long life. For a whole winter, the singing of white opera and young opera in the brigade disappeared. The sound of southern fiddle and flute disappeared. But the voice of long life often sounded. From long live the person to long live the political parties, from long live the country to long live the army. On the contrary, it was more lively than a few years earlier. In front of the brigade headquarters, there is a large open space with several tall and old locust trees. In summer, there are large areas of shade on the ground. This has become a place where neighbors gather. For example, when eating lunch, many people will hold their rice bowls, come under the old locust trees, squat down, eat, and talk, like a dining hall. Generally speaking, there are no more than these few people who stand in the shade with rice bowls and eat. Guangli, Guanglis, Jinlong, Jinlongs, octopus, and octopuses. They are all neighbors of the brigade headquarters, senior residents. When Wu Manling first moved in, she ate in the west wing, and while eating, she felt it was inappropriate. Doing so is to isolate her from the masses, which is self-isolation. She then also carried her bowl and came to the shade. Because the bowl was small, it was inconvenient to get rice while going in and out. So Wu Manling simply changed it to a big ocean bowl with pickles, which was much easier. Wu Manling was holding the ocean bowl and squatting on the ground with the villagers, almost like a beggar. Of course, she was not used to it at first, and many actions cannot be made at once. But Wu Mainling has an advantage. She can learn everything and overcome everything, and she generally gets used to it. Once you get used to it, it's very natural. Wu Mainling squats on the ground, eating quite fast, faster than the average farmer. On the issue of eating, Wu Mainling has developed a strong ability and can use more, faster, better, and sieving to make theoretical generalizations. Wu Mainling does not save effort while working and can compete with the strongest male. Therefore, her food intake has reached an astonishing level in recent years. This requires her to eat fast. Wu Mainling's excellent kung fu has been acquired during the busy farming season. With so busy farming work, how could she have time to dawdle at the dinner table? But eating is like that. Once fast, even if you have nothing to do, you can't slow down. Your eating is a little battle. Wu Mainling, holding the ocean bowl in one hand and chopstick in the other, conducts tunnel warfare, sparrow warfare, sports warfare, and annihilation warfare in the ocean bowl. The full and spiky ocean bowl is divided quickly and wiped out by Wu Mainling in a blink. After eating, Wu Mainling is not in a hurry to return to the west wing, but supports her thighs, stands up, burps twice, then clenches her right hand into an empty fist, raises her pinky finger, and picks her teeth. While pinking, she chats with the villagers. Because she is too full, Wu Mainling puts the ocean bowl on the ground and shoves the chopsticks on it. This is good. Both hands are empty. Then put them on the back of the waist and take a rest position with both legs, which is comfortable. This is the most leisurely moment of Wu Mainling's day, and it is also the most satisfying moment. It was very hot at noon. At noon on this day, everyone was having lunch in the shade of a tree. Guangli, guanglis, jinlong, jinlongs, octopus, octopuses. Wu Mainling and some children were all squatting on the ground, chatting, saying some salty and bland words. Very leisurely. Wu Mainling had already eaten and was picking her teeth. At this time, a passerby came not far away with a large glass mirror plaque on his back. The stranger came under the shade of the tree, heaved a sigh of relief, and very carefully leaned the glass mirror plaque against the tree trunk. A pair of magpies are painted on the mirror plaque, and there is a line of red characters, "Happiness on beam." Jinlong started chatting with the stranger. And after inquiring, it turned out that he was from Li village. His relative was building a house, so he was sending the gift. Guangli was chatting with the passerby, and Wu Mainling walked up. Wu Mainling never looks in the mirror usually, as Wu Mainling doesn't like it. But today Wu Mainling wanted to see if she was blacker. There was a person in the mirror occupying the entire mirror plaque. Wu Mainling thought it was Jinlong's, so she glanced to the side and planned to ask her to go. However, there was no one around Wu Mainling, only herself. Turning around and looking in the mirror, she was sure. Yes, it was herself. However, Wu Mainling didn't believe it and reconfirmed it. This time, it was confirmed that it was her. It was absolutely true. Wu Mainling never expected that she would become like this. She was not only terrible and ugly, but also sloppy and messy. The most terrible thing is her standing position. With her legs split, her hands resting on her waist, and her belly showing, she's simply an unreasonable female gangster. Like asking for that. When did I become like this? Which day? Wu Mainling's heart froze immediately, and she lowered her face. At this time, Jinlong's came over. The heartless woman said to the magpies in the mirror, "Little Wu, your female magpie has no male magpie yet." God. Wu Manling didn't actually hear her, but Wu Manling turned around suddenly and laughed. She went back to the brigade alone. Wu Manling's behavior made Jinlong unable to step down. Lady Wu had always been kind, and she had never treated others like this. Obviously, Jinlong was rushed and talked unconsciously. Jinlong was quiet for a long time while holding his rice bowl and asked his wife with his head tilted, "What are you sleazy for?" Jinlong knew that her mouth caused trouble and dared not to say a word. But in front of so many people, she lost her face and whispered, "You've eaten stools. You spray shit as soon as open your mouth." When Jinlong heard this, he became even angrier, took a step forward, and said, "What are you sleazy for?" The passerby glanced at them, put on the mirror plaque, and laughed. Guangli was crooked on the tree trunk and concerned that the couple would really hurt the piece, so he would only come forward to smooth things out. Guangli said while chewing, "Jinlong, don't blame your wife. Just a joke. Forget it." Jinlong felt that he was so sorry to Secretary Wu, and he was on fire and said to Guangli, "What's the matter? It's none of your ass's business." Guangli was stunned for a moment and said, "Jinlong, your wife was right. I think you really ate shit. You don't even know any sense." Jinlong heard that Guangli scolded her man like this and quickly took the words of Guangli and said to Guangli, "You eat shit. It's you who eats shit." Guangli squatted on the side and remained silent. Hearing Jinlong's farting on her husband's face, she finally spoke up and said to Jinlong in a low and soft voice, "What else are you talking about? The man in your family even says you're sleazy. You're not wronged. If someone wrongs you, he won't wrong you. What else do you say?" Jinlong only intended to teach his wife a lesson. Seeing that others were coming to ridicule her, he couldn't swallow it. His wife's speaking was dumb. How could she be as bright as Guangli's? So he hurriedly turned the fire and said to Guangli's, "Guangli's, you clarify. Who is sleazy?" Guangli's paid a few efforts and said, "What else are you talking about? You have said it clearly. You can be blamed. You can't expose your own ugliness. How can you talk about your wife like this?" This is irritating. Jinlong was furious and shouted loudly, "She's my wife. I can say this. You can't." Guangli didn't compete for loudness with Jinlong, but said in a lighter voice, "Of course you can. You know the situation best." This sentence choked Jinlong, unable to speak. Jinlong left Guangli, pointed his finger at Guangli, and warned, "Guangli, did you hear her? Are your wife's words even human?" Guangli smiled instead and said, "You know the situation best. Who else knows if you don't?" Jinlong was really anxious this time. He popped his eyes and said, "I'll beat you, bastard!" Guangli took a step back with a wicked smile on his face. Jinlong became furious and said, "I'm beating you up!" Hearing the movement, Wu Manling came out again. Her hair had been combed. However, her mood was very bad. But the more in a bad mood, the more she is like the party secretary of the village. Wu Manling stopped in front of Jinlong and said, "You gotta stop!" How could she persuade? Jinlong still wanted to pounce. Wu Manling said sternly, "Jinlong, stop it!" Jinlong didn't move and couldn't say anything. He was gasping for breath, just blinked for a long time, and said, "Lady Wu, I'm sorry. Don't take it seriously." Wu Manling was confused and said, "What are you sorry for me? Who is sorry for me?" Jinlong pointed to the glass mirror plaque under the tree, trying to bring the topic back to Magpie and explain it to Secretary Wu. However, they found that the glass mirror plaque was no longer there, and the passerby had gone for long. Jinlong didn't know what to say anymore, stomped at his feet, and scolded his wife sharply. "Don't you do the dishes yet?" Guangli was a clever person and immediately gave his wife a wink. Guangli's tugged at Jinlong's and said, "Let's go." Jinlong's shook off Guangli's but still followed Guangli's. Wu Manling looked puzzled and said to Guangli, "What's going on?" Guangli said, "It's all right." Wu Manling was stubborn. In fact, she was over-hearted. She insisted that they were talking bad about her and said she was ugly. Wu Manling said, "Guangli, you don't tell the truth, do you?" Guangli made a lie and said, "Hey, it's nothing to do with you. It's about haunted things." Wu Manling said, "Where is the haunted place?" Guangli said, "The brigade is haunted." Wu Manling said, "What's going on about the brigade haunting?" Guangli thought for a while, smiled, pottered, and said, "It's all nonsense. Hey, nonsense."